Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We are your hosts, David O.
And Eric V.
Today we are joined by our special guest, Molly. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, you guys. This is my first podcast. I'm very excited to share my experience, strength, and hope with you guys.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So where are you from, Molly?
Like any good addict, I have done a lot of geographic changes, so from all over.
Nice. Where'd you grow up? And where are you now?
I grew up in a really small town in Montana, and then spent most of my adult life in Seattle, Washington, then back to Montana, South America, Nashville, Tennessee, and now I've been in Kansas City with my family for the last 3 years.
Cool.
Now, according to our president, is that Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas? Just so we know geographically. No, I'm just kidding. That was bad.
Okay. I live in Kansas City, Kansas, but I work in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So, when were you first introduced to recovery?
So I had a lot of good people in my life in Seattle who were clean and sober. Mm-hmm. And I chose to see the differences between us instead of the similarities. Mm. And people made comments, and I wasn't one of those people. They needed to go to meetings and not drink because they had a problem. I didn't.
Yep.
And I really had a lot of preconceived notions about recovery and what AA was. In my mind, they were going to ask me to give up vodka for Jesus, and that was not a deal I was going to make.
Nice.
That's amazing.
That
should be a shirt.
amazing. Yeah, that should be give up vodka for Jesus. Yeah, I think we might have to steal that. That's kind of awesome. And
in my head, that's what it was. And then all I really knew is that those people didn't drink, and I was not interested in that.
I hear you. And how long have you been sober?
So my last shot of vodka, my sobriety date is December 5th, 2016. I took my last shot of vodka at 6 a.m. on December 4th. I didn't know that you were supposed to go get really drunk the night before you went to detox. But I didn't really know that much about recovery. So December 5th, 2016 was the first day I didn't have anything to drink. So that's my birthday.
Nice. All right. Well, with all that out of the way, we're going to turn it over to you to share your story with us. So take it away.
Okay. Well, so I'm Molly. I'm an alcoholic. My drinking story, I had my first drink when I was 14. I don't really talk to people about whether or not this is a disease, a condition, whatever you want to call it, because that's the wrong conversation. Whatever you want to call it, we don't deny people medical care because of bad decisions. So if you think it's a bad decision, our ERs would be empty if we denied medical care because of bad decisions. Humans are crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So if I refer to it as the condition or the disease of alcoholism, that's just what I call it. Mm-hmm. Mine is the story of it being progressive. I started drinking when I was 14. I didn't get sober until I was 34. And I wasn't an out-of-the-gate alcoholic. I didn't get drunk on a bottle of Jack Daniels the first night I drank. I lived in a really small town, and I will say this, probably the biggest characterization of there was something wrong with my brain is I had FOMO, fear of missing out. And I always tell this when I share, is because I was a little kid with FOMO, 6, 7, 8 years old, watching Chip and Dale and seeing them in New York City and thinking, that's where it's at. Those people are living. Those people have arrived. So when I first started drinking, it wasn't the effect produced by alcohol. All I needed was to have a wine cooler in my hand, and I was okay. I'd arrived. I was part of if I was at the party. So I didn't really drink a lot in high school. Were
wine coolers your first drink?
I think schnapps. I think peppermint schnapps was the first actual exploring. But as high school went on, this is the late 90s, I was definitely the wine coolers. The black cherry wine coolers were the thing.
I'm gonna call you out. That's kind of lame.
It is, like I said, I was not an out of the gate blackout drunk all the time. All I needed to cure that FOMO was just to be there and actually have the drink. And the problem with that is it cemented in my teenage brain that fun and alcohol and glamour were synonymous. And when I tried to get sober at 34, that was one of the hardest things to change. And so college, it was hard for me to tell I had a problem in college because I drank when and how much my peers did. I can think maybe of 5 times that I got really drunk in college. It wasn't until I was 23 and I moved to Seattle, and people who don't have a problem start to slow down and they get jobs, and where my drinking picked up. And I feel like this is such an important part of my story. I had always worked in the restaurant industry, and I continued working in the restaurant industry, where we are, I think, maybe top 5 for substance abuse problems.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So my friends are getting jobs as engineers, and I'm working in restaurants. And at this time, I'm not drinking every day. I don't drink in the morning. What happens when I'm 24 is I move in by myself, and then I start drinking alone. And then it's kind of like the bartender's sliding. So at this time, I'm working in a restaurant as a server in order to pay for culinary school. And it's like the bartender slides a shot across the bar. I take it, and I feel better. I like my job more. I'm more friendly and outgoing at work. And then it's like, oh, I'll stop. What were those stupid energy drinks with alcohol, Sparks?
Yes.
I'd stop and get a Sparks before work. And the thing about the restaurant industry is drinking on the job varies from low tolerance to completely condoned. There's jobs where if you show up drunk, you are fired on the spot. The restaurant industry is not one.
No.
If you are there and vertical, you're working.
Yep.
So drinking starts to pick up a little bit, but it's still fun. And at this point, people around me, my friends, they've never really seen me drunk. On my 25th birthday was the only time a lot of people had ever seen me actually drunk. The year I turned 25, though, that's the first time I remember being on kind of a binge after a vacation, and that was the first night I woke up and I wanted to die. Very clearly remember that night, waking up, the racing thoughts, the anxiety, the feeling suicidal. And that was 9 years before I got sober, the first time I felt that way. And it really didn't slow me down that much. But my mid-20s is when it went from fun to fun with consequences. And that last year of culinary school is when things really started to deteriorate. And the drinking got to where people at work would talk to me about my drinking, and I would miss school because I drank so much the night before. And the big thing is I lived alone, so no one really saw how bad it was. I didn't have kids or a boyfriend or a roommate to see how often I drank and how much I drank. And at this time, Seattle did not sell hard liquor in the grocery stores yet. So I mostly drank wine. And I remember waking up and being shocked that I drank a whole bottle of wine. And that eventually went to a point where I would wake up shocked I drank the whole bottle of vodka. But when you drink like I did, it starts to be fun with consequences, as we say. And I quickly ruined 2 relationships. I had anxiety so bad, it was debilitating. I could barely function. And so I had to be done with Seattle, because obviously it was Seattle, not me and my drinking. And this is where the geographic changes really start to come in. I decided to move to Kansas City because I'm going to move here and I'm going to get this great boyfriend and this great job, and I'm going to be able to drink the way that I want to drink and have friends. And at this point, my family knew I drank a lot. When I first moved here and lived with my sister and brother-in-law, that's when it was the eye-opener of like, wow, Molly really has a problem. And when you drink the way that I drink, you don't get to have good things in your life. Mm-hmm. Nothing goes well. And I very quickly grenaded my life in Kansas City. And I became very suicidal, very depressed. I ended up in the psych ward here. I called my sister one morning and I was like, I want to kill myself. So she took me to Shawnee Mission. I was so low on potassium, they couldn't even admit me. So I'm laying in the hospital for 90 minutes, getting a banana bag of potassium pumped into me. Mm-hmm. And of course, I lie about how much I drank. Yep. I have like 3 or 4 drinks a week. So I don't even know how after the whole potassium thing went down, they admitted me to the psych ward and not the detox. But it's kind of interesting because some Friday nights now I go and share my story at that detox. It's like, oh yeah, I remember being on the other side of this floor. So I was willing to admit I was depressed, and I was not willing to admit I had a drinking problem. So they put me on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, and sleeping pills, which you are not supposed to drink on. No. With little skulls on the bottle. And, well, of course I do. And this, for me, at this point in my story, this is 6 years before I get sober, I really feel like this was the point of no return. This is when every night becomes blackout drinking. And very quickly my life gets bad in Kansas City, so I decided to move back to Seattle. And the next 5 years, by the time I moved back to Seattle, they have started selling hard alcohol in the grocery stores in Seattle. So it went from me being surprised that I had finished a bottle or a magnum of wine to me waking up being surprised I'd finished a bottle of vodka. Boredom and loneliness are my triggers. If I had a Tuesday off, I would get up. I'm also a fitness instructor as well as a sous chef. I would get up on a day off, which might be a random Tuesday, teach a fitness class. And I've taught fitness classes intoxicated. I've played miniature golf. I did everything with alcohol in my system, knitting. It didn't matter, whatever. And that was a Tuesday, just sitting in my apartment alone, drinking a bottle of vodka, which it's so funny that still in my head, drinking and fun were synonymous, because if I think about the last 5 years of drinking, I can think of thousands of nights that I humiliated myself, that I lost my phone, my purse, my dignity. I can't really come up with a night where there was fun. And I'm still an alcoholic. I will still look around and have that thought that day drinking is fun.
Yep.
And it's just not for me. Day drinking ends up with me being in an argument with the people I was with, maybe without my shoes, wandering around. And so that first thought is always wrong for me as an alcoholic. And if I do play the tape through, I can realize, like, okay, no, it's not fun. It hasn't been fun for a very long time, and it's never going to be fun again. So pretty soon I have ruined my life again in Seattle. The places I worked won't have anything to do with me because I'm always drunk on the job. I have no friends left, so I decided to move back to Montana. Spend 3 months there before I get fired from 2 jobs. And then as my story comes to an end with the drinking, I finally moved to Nashville and have a great job there for a month. And I get drunk on the job one night, and the owner says to me, I'm firing you because you were drunk on the job, and I can't have that. That probably helped save my life, because he was the first person to just straight up look at me and say that. And not be like, oh, well, we're going to let you go, or we don't have work for you right now. And then during this time, another thing happened that it's a higher power thing. I met this guy named Seth, and he had 9 months of sobriety. And I had a problem. He could see it. I got fired from my job, and I spent the next week binge drinking on Broadway in Nashville. Every night I was at the honky tonks, wasted. And I'd met this guy, Seth, and he was sober, and he was kind of talking me through, yeah, you need help. You need to go to a 30-day treatment program. And I don't know that if I had not met him, if I would have really been able to do that 30-day treatment program that I ended up doing. But the last night I drank, I have no idea how I got home. My roommate, who was a friend from Seattle, came home, and she kicked me out. And I don't know, you guys, why I was done. Because I had fought really hard for a really long time to continue drinking. And I just tapped out that day in Nashville. I was tired. And I had no fight left in me to keep drinking. But I wasn't happy about not drinking. I didn't have a good attitude. I never got the pink cloud in the first 3 months of sobriety. It was like, okay, well, for the first time in a long time, I don't want to die. But this is also going to suck because the party's over. So I called my family, and my sister, who was in Kansas City, said, come here, drive home. So next day, this is December 5th, 2016, I get in my car, and I drive 8 hours from Nashville to Kansas City. I got here. She drove me to a detox center, Cottonwood Springs, and I still didn't really realize how bad I was. Kind of did, kind of knew I had a lot of problems from drinking, but I was like, oh, they're just going to recommend outpatient for me. They kept me and medically detoxed me at Cottonwood Springs for 5 days, and then they recommended that I go to Addison Valley Hope, which is a 30-day treatment program here. And like I said, had I not met Seth, I don't know I would have been open to that. But he called and talked to me on the phone, and he said, do it. And the word he used was surrender. Just surrender to this and be honest. And I don't know why, because I had lied about everything for the last 3 years. I just told them everything. And that was my moment of clarity. I've heard people talk about moments of clarity on their closet floor with a bottle of alcohol. Mine was realizing that this was it. This was the life preserver that I had prayed for years. And I had to grab on or I was going to die. And so my counselor in treatment, she can tell you I had a really bad attitude about being there. That was what I kept saying. The fun's over. The fun's over. I'm never going to have fun again. I'm just going to work till I die. And so I did this 30 days, and I will say this. I listened. I paid attention. I was open to the suggestions. I started to appreciate the fellowship. I wasn't there to make friends. I saw people in treatment get into romances. I saw them feel like they found their family. And I did that because we're so isolated at the end. And I definitely, I remember my roommate said to me, we're still friends actually, she said, you're a really private person, aren't you? And I just was really focused because I was hanging on so tightly to that life preserver. But I remember really connecting to the fellowship, to the idea that all of us had different stories, but all these people had felt the same way. They had all woken up at 2 a.m. wanting to die with their heart racing. And I connected to that. So when I'm in my counseling meetings and I'm complaining about how the fun is over, life is just horrible now, my counselor said, I want you to call this woman Tiffany and ask her how not fun her life is. So I did. And she told me that I was going to meet her the day I got out of treatment. Another thing that really helped me while I was in treatment was my chaplain said to me, you can drink. You want to be sober. And that was a light bulb moment for me that kind of really flipped the script in my head of being sober. So I got out of treatment on a Sunday morning, did what I was told, and went to meet this woman, Tiffany, that night. She introduced me to my sponsor, whose name was also Molly, and I went to a meeting that night. And like I said, I didn't get the pink cloud. I didn't like doing things sober. I didn't like being in public sober. I went to where I got sober at this huge AA hall. It was so uncomfortable. I remember being in meetings and thinking, God, this would be easy if I had had a few drinks. I felt naked and raw and uncomfortable. There was some relief. I was sleeping through the night, which I hadn't done in years. But I wasn't excited about sobriety. I pouted about it. It's one of my character defects. I'm petty, I'm spiteful, and I like to feel sorry for myself. So that's basically what I did. I remember I was 7 months sober the first 4th of July that I was sober that first year. And I sat at home and pouted because I didn't want to go out on the boat with my family because I couldn't drink and it wouldn't be any fun. I did not get the promises until I had worked all the steps. And I had an amazing first sponsor. She took me through the steps about 1 step a month. And then one day at about 8 months sober, I'd just taken a commitment where I was going to Shawnee Mission Detox and I was telling my story once a week. And I remember driving there, and for the first time in my life, I was content. And it wasn't attached to anything. I had serenity. I was content. I was enough. Life was enough. And it's crazy because at that point, my life on paper didn't look that good. I was 35 years old. I was 8 months sober, and I was living in my sister's spare bedroom. And I really do have to say that about getting sober. My family saved my life. My brother and sister-in-law, and my brother-in-law and sister, they paid for my treatment. They insisted that I live with them for the first year. I didn't pay rent. I mean, every sobriety birthday, I message them and I say, thank you for my life. And I am so grateful for that. And, you know, we do have to get sober for ourselves. But I promise you, there were nights in that first 6 months where I stayed sober for my family because I could not spit in my sister's face that way. Because they saved my life. So that was, I hear a kitty.
Yep.
So I lived with them, and like I said, my life didn't look that good on paper. And what's crazy is when I lived in Seattle, my life looked amazing on paper. I had the job, the money, the cool apartment. I traveled all over the world, which is something that is interesting about me thinking I was traveling and vacationing when I was drinking. It wasn't. I was just taking my shit show on the road and drinking in planes and bars all over the world.
Yeah.
It's really cool now in sobriety to get to go somewhere and actually be on vacation and relax and experience things and not just go somewhere else to be drunk.
Yeah.
So that's my story. That's how I got sober. I still go to 4 or 5. I'm still sponsored. I still sponsor other women. I still go and speak at Detox. I still attend AA meetings every week. And I love that saying, AA is the best club I never wanted to be a part of. And it's, you know, when I first got sober and I had that horrible attitude, when people would say they were grateful alcoholics, that didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And now I do say that. Being an alcoholic is the best thing that ever happened to me. AA taught me how to show up as the person that I want to be. I remember feeling really bad when I first got sober about the last 9 years of my life. It was wreckage. And a friend of mine, Sarah, she said, instead of feeling sorry for yourself, why don't you start, like, instead of wishing that you could go back and do things differently, why don't you start showing up as that person now? And that was incredible. That really resonated with me. That was so powerful for me. I was like, oh yeah, I can start showing up as the person I want to be now that I'm not drunk. But I have to have the people in AA show me that. I will lie to myself. And so I have to do the 5 to stay alive. I have to call another alcoholic every day. I have to pray. I have to go to a meeting. I have to call my sponsor. I just can't do it on my own.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we definitely have some questions for you. Eric, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
So you mentioned a little bit, it was probably about 10 minutes or so ago, you mentioned about triggers and cravings. And
I knew you were going to go for that.
I was curious, how do you manage your triggers and cravings, and, also how have they kind of evolved over the years that you've been in recovery?
So now that I'm aware of them, my tool is one, I almost always call another alcoholic immediately. Mm-hmm. And for me, I need to talk to another addict, because when I call someone who's not, so say for example, I used to call my sister and it scared her because she didn't understand. Mm-hmm. And where she would go is, oh my gosh, Molly's going to relapse. Mm-hmm. And so now when I call my friend, either my sponsor, Sarah Taylor, my friend Brooke, my friend Lauren, they know exactly how my crazy brain is working and can help talk me down from the ledge. I also make myself do things. So I said loneliness and boredom. I really, when those things are happening, I find a meeting and I go to a meeting. Mm-hmm. Having the awareness is the biggest thing. And I think the most powerful tool that I have is I play the tape. They say play the tape back, play the tape through. Either or, it's the same thing. What happens when I drink? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And being able to acknowledge and accept that reality, that first thought goes away really fast. It's like, oh, day drinking's fun. No, it's not. Yeah. Think about how you end up shoeless and lost at 2 a.m. Is that fun? No, it really isn't. Mm-hmm. And really then just being out in the world and being around people who drink is not a good look on anyone.
No, it's really not.
I know we feel real sexy when we're wasted, but you see you in someone else, glassy-eyed, stumbling, arrogant, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm so grateful that I don't have to be that person today.
Yeah.
And in terms of curing my FOMO, learning how to be grateful. The minute I get into gratitude and I'm grateful for what is going on, that FOMO goes away. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to do that when I was drinking.
Mm-hmm. All right. My question actually sort of goes right with like what you were just talking about, your FOMO. So anybody who's just tuning in, FOMO is fear of missing out.
You tuning into life?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Tuning in from under your rock. So like through your step work and like through recovery, have you explored your like that feeling, that fear of missing out that you had even as like a child? And like, was there an event or like a thinking or a behavior or a circumstance like in your childhood that like led to that? And like, how did that really like precipitate into your addiction?
So I think part of it was I lived 10 miles out of town in a really small town. Okay. So there are people that are very happy there though. Mm-hmm. And that, I think that in me, it was a fear, it was an insecurity and a feeling of inadequacy within myself. And alcohol helped make the FOMO go away. Okay. And I really discovered that in my mid-20s. If I'm drinking, if I'm tipsy, all of a sudden that FOMO is gone. Mm-hmm. And in getting sober and learning how to be present. And for me, I didn't know what that meant to be present. But what they taught me in recovery is when you're grateful, you become present. Even if it's little tiny simple things for I'm grateful that I'm sober today. I remember when I prayed for everything that I have now. And I know that people will roll their eyes when they go to gratitude meetings, but man, as a recovering alcoholic, I have to live in gratitude. That's the key to staying sober for me.
Mm-hmm. You know, like when you said that, like when you were talking about like being like 10 miles out of town, it brought back sort of like one of those like Mother Goose kind of tales, like, you know, the country mouse and the city mouse. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you were just kind of like born a city mouse, that you were just sort of like in the country though, and you were just out of place a little bit?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. That just came to mind. And I have a quick fun question, because I too.
Which one? I'm so sorry.
I have a fun question. So,
okay, absolutely.
So not addiction related. I went to culinary school as well, and I work in the restaurant industry. What is your favorite thing to cook?
I like to do Asian fusion.
Okay.
So using seasonal local ingredients, but then doing like Asian seasonings.
Mm-hmm. All right. Cool. I'll have another cooking question later. Back to you. Back to you, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm assuming from what you were kind of saying, like that first meeting you went to that was huge, and how, you know, you were very anxious. Is it safe to assume that you have social anxiety?
You know, I go to therapy about once a month. I actually don't really have anxiety in sobriety.
Oh.
Which is crazy, because when I drink, I have debilitating anxiety. I can't function. I can't think straight. And it's kind of weird, because in sobriety, I do meditate every morning. That was something I didn't do that was suggested for my first year of sobriety. I find that when there's some anxiety, it's very, very manageable.
So did a lot of your mental health issues go away once you started your recovery? Like once you really got into recovery, because you said you had depression and anxiety when you were drinking and you were suicidal. Did a lot of those mental health issues subside?
For me, they all went away. So that's just my personal experience with how I feel. Sorry, my dryer just went. So
I thought that was your cat recovery, for a second.
Yeah, I was like, what is wrong with your cat?
The cat is really mad.
And so that's my experience. When I don't drink, I don't suffer from anxiety or depression.
Awesome.
That makes sense.
When I do drink, I can't function. They're so bad. And everyone, again, everyone's different. It's not like that's the same scenario for everyone. It's just for me, when I don't drink, I don't have to deal with anxiety or depression.
All right. Okay. I kind of want to go along with that, because my question was related to that as well. Like you talked about that first meeting and sort of just feeling uncomfortable, and then you fast forward 7 months to the 4th of July, and you're kind of being a poopy pants. You're like, I can't drink. I'm not going on the boat, because you're feeling you're feeling some sort of way. And I get that. So through early recovery and until now, how hard was it to really sit through your feelings, and learn how to sit through your feelings? And then ultimately, how rewarding has it been getting through those and learning better coping skills for them as recovery has gone on?
I always say getting sober is the hardest thing I've ever done. I have often compared getting sober to getting in shape. It sucks. It sucks when you're getting there. It's horrible. You don't like it. It's uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden your life gets a lot better and it's worth it. Mm-hmm. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. It's the best thing I've ever done. Everything I ever wanted, I got in sobriety. Mm-hmm. Both like inside and outside. I did learn, I used to care so much about how it looked from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And in sobriety, I learned to care, like, how does it look from the inside looking out? Mm. And it looks really good in sobriety. This serenity I have, like you said, having those coping skills of, I think the biggest thing is, no, not every day is sunshine and rainbows. Mm-hmm. But learning that it's not, my favorite thing, one of the best things I ever heard in a meeting was that Viktor Frankl quote is, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And within that space lies our choice. And within our choice lies our freedom and our growth. And in recovery, I've learned that, like, I don't have to respond. I don't have to react to everything that happens. In recovery, I get to choose my response to the things that happen now. And that response is not to go drink. Mm-hmm. And that no matter how bad it is in the moment, I can suit up, I can show up, I can act like the person that I want to be, and that I later won't have to make amends. And that also, whatever is bad, it's going to pass too. Mm-hmm. And things, it's the ebb and flow of life. Things might be bad right now, and that's okay. I'm still going to act like the person I want to be, and things will be good again. And during that time, I'll be grateful.
Love it. Great answer. That was a great quote you used. What you got, Eric?
This is why I still go to meetings all the time, because I hear these things that still ring my bell. Mm-hmm. And especially, in going, just every time I've heard someone talk about relapse, which is not part of my story yet, mm-hmm. I got away from the program. And that's why I still go and tell my story at Detox. I remember it was like a couple months ago that I went, and there was this kid who was sitting there, and he was kind of telling us what had happened in the last several weeks. And he looked up and he said, no one thinks they're going to end up drinking vodka with coffee. And for some reason, no one in the room really reacted. And it just punched me in the gut, because I knew what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. He meant that when he woke up and had the shakes, he was using yesterday's coffee and the leftover vodka and mixing them to try and stop from shaking. Ugh. And so but I knew what he was saying. And I just like I said, it punched me in the gut. It was oh yeah, this is why I come. This is why I hear this stuff. This is why I work with newcomers, because it is like that. It is like that when I drink. Mm. Yeah. It's not sexy. It's not glamorous. It's that.
Yeah.
All right. So I kind of want to stick to, I asked you about triggers and cravings earlier. I want to ask about reservations. And what are some of the reservations that you still have? And then how are you working to get past those reservations?
Okay, can I have you maybe give more of a definition for reservations? Can you help me with that?
Sure.
Please?
Yeah, a reservation, so it's something where, let's say my cat died, and because
deal
of that,
breakers. What are my deal breakers?
Yeah. Okay. Deal breaker.
My cat dies. I'm drinking.
Here are my thoughts on deal breakers. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I actually had this conversation with a sponsee the other night. I had a lot of reservations when I was first over. If I won the lottery, I bought a lottery ticket. It's a $500 million lottery ticket. If I win, I'm drinking. And I want to say, I had some fucked up reservations. If my family died, I'm drinking. Mm-hmm. And I kind of learned to not qualify my reservations. Mm-hmm. I'm an alcoholic. That's why I have those thoughts. I'm not bad or crazy because I have those thoughts. I'm an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And what I've come to put those in are the category of someone. If anything smart comes out of my mouth, by the way, it's because someone else said it. I've had a lot of really great people that I've met in recovery. And this woman in treatment, she said, you have to remember that you are grieving. You are grieving the loss of the longest relationship you've ever had. And you're grieving the loss of your coping mechanism. You're grieving the loss of instant gratification. And there are 5 stages of grieving. And you know what one of those stages is? Bargaining. And that's what deal breakers are. Deal breakers are just bargaining. They're the bargaining stage of grief. Okay, so if my cat dies, I can drink.
Huh.
And as I have grieved the loss with the help of a therapist and with the help of a sponsor and with the help of other alcoholics, those deal breakers have gone away. I truly have accepted that there is no situation that drinking would not make worse. And that's not to say that I'm like far away from a drink. I'm an alcoholic. It's a cunning and baffling foe. It is always right there. And I'm always very aware of what I am and what it is. But there's not something that it's like, oh, if this happened, I would drink. And like I said, there's still weird ones that pop in my head. Like, okay, when I'm 85 years old and smoking a cigarette in Portugal as a little old lady, I'll have some alcohol. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, how horrible. You want to be 85 years old and waking up suicidal? No, come on.
Yeah. I really like you rung my bell right there. Just saying that grieving the loss of your coping mechanisms and like grieving the loss of the longest relationship you've ever had. And then the follow-up of that of like reservations or deal breakers are the bargaining stage of grief. That like I have never heard it put like that, but that is a perfect analogy. Wow.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's what I was doing. I was bargaining. I was, okay, when can I drink again?
Yeah. No, it makes a lot more sense. And I'm going to use it.
And just giving myself grace. Like giving myself the grace that I extend to friends and sponsees. It's like the biggest thing I've focused on in recovery is being as nice to myself as I am to other people. And that's what I'm talking about, like not qualifying those thoughts. Okay, I'm having a crazy thought right now. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not bad. It's just a thought that I have because I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah. Me and my sponsor call them the bad idea bats. They just sort of fly in out of nowhere. And you just got to shoo them away. Get out of here. It's the bad idea bats. All right. Okay. So we, me, Eric and I, on Podcast Recovery have seen a little bit of a difference between our NA people and our AA people. So this is something like we like to ask both of them. Have you found that your like addiction or your like addictive personality or affliction, has it manifested in other ways since you've gotten sober?
I think that, I think that my...
Like, are you buying a ton of high heels or Michael Kors bags? Are you gambling your paychecks away? Anything like that?
No, and I credit that to really good sponsorship and practicing rigorous honesty. I mean, but what it really comes down to is my DOC is alcohol. I just don't get that from those other things. I will say this, something my therapist and I have really worked on this year is my codependency in romantic relationships.
Okay.
That's been a big like thing in sobriety is, you know, working on that and learning how to not be codependent.
All right.
So that's I mean, but no, I didn't find something else to replace alcohol.
Okay.
So this will be my last question.
Okay. I have two more.
Okay, David.
I'm taking mine too.
Look at you over there.
I'm taking mine too.
So, as your recovery has grown and evolved over the past few years, what would you say, you kind of described what recovery was like in the beginning and, how AA, played a role, and how AA has played a role, but how has your recovery changed and evolved since you've been sober?
It's not as much. It's not okay, let me phrase this very carefully. My sobriety still is the most important thing in my life. It has to be my number one thing, or I don't get anything else. Having said that, when I first got sober, I think part of feeling sorry for myself was, this is all there is now. I'm just going to spend the rest of my life in meetings. This is it. Mm-hmm. And I think what has changed is now I still do the things that I did when I got sober, but my life is really big now. And as much as AA is a really important part of my life, there's more. My life is big now. It's not the only thing. And that's a really great place to get where I have other things going on. I do other things. I have other hobbies. And I didn't see that when I first got sober, because when I first got sober, that's all I had and that's all I did. And that was kind of depressing. And now, as important as it is to me and it is still part of my life, there's so many other things that are gifts because I worked the 12 steps.
Mm-hmm. All right. Which question am I going to ask first? Okay, so I'm going to ask about more about the restaurant industry because I'm
okay. Yeah. I think that's yeah.
It's important because there are tons of us out there. I know a bunch of people in my area who are clean and still work in the restaurant industry. I still work in the restaurant industry, and it's tough because I have coworkers who use and they come in reeking like pot or smelling like alcohol, and I'm the boss. I'm the boss. So I kind of have to deal with it, and yeah, I have to endure a lot of that. And growing up through that restaurant, before I was the big cheese, before I was the general manager, I had to deal with a lot of these people, and it was tough from time to time. So how have you dealt with that in the restaurant industry? And how do you deal with that on a day-to-day basis at work?
I think it's something that I've brought up in meetings, and what someone said to me in a meeting one time when I was complaining about that it was hard. They said, maybe your higher power needs you to be there right now. And remembering that I get to show up as a member of a program that is about attraction, not promotion. And maybe my higher power needs me to be there to show someone else that this is how a sober woman acts. And that I am always an example of a sober woman in the community, that people were that for me. I can remember so many people that I knew in Seattle that were living in recovery. And they were examples for me. And I'm lucky. I feel grateful that I'm in an industry where I can speak candidly about being in recovery, because some people do have jobs where they truly need to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
I'm not. I can talk about it. Everyone.
Me too.
And part of it is, for me, I am very candid about it because that's an accountability thing for me too, because I can never play that little game of oh, these people don't know I don't drink. I could have a little wine in the wine tasting.
Yep.
Everyone I work with knows that I live in recovery.
Yep.
And it feels good to me when people reach out and say, I think I have a problem.
Yeah.
And I try and remember that maybe I'm just, my higher power needs me there to be of service.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because actually right now I'm currently dealing with one of my coworkers who I've worked with for the last 5 years. He just went into detox for alcohol, and before he went in, he reached out to me, and like I gave him the avenues. Like I didn't, I'm not his sponsor or anything like that. But I was like, hey, these are the places that you can look at and like do what you have to do. And he was like, I'd like you to help me with like meetings and this and that. And I'm like, absolutely. And I've never thought of it that way. Like maybe it's just somewhere I need to be, and kind of endure those difficulties in order to help somebody else. So I really like, that was a great answer. And
thank you. Someone else gave it to me.
Nice.
That's what I was told when I brought it up at a meeting. Go be of service. That is the answer to most everything.
Nice. See, but you totally could have just stolen it. You could have been like, oh, yeah, that was totally me. All right. So you've worked all 12 steps, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The question is, you can only pick one. What is your favorite step?
3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turn it over.
Did you hear that,
You know
Eric?
what? I don't know. All I know is that I'm not God. That's all I know. That's all I have to know.
Yep.
And I was a staunch agnostic when I came into the program. And one of those ring the bell moments was this woman's still a really good friend of mine. She said, you're in a meeting at 6 o'clock at night and you're sober. Is that not a fucking power greater than yourself? And I was like, oh, it is. So I did use the group as my higher power for a long time because that was true. I was somewhere at 6 o'clock at night and I was sober, and I can't do that I couldn't at that time do that on my own. So now, I think it's important to have that higher power conversation because I know that so many of us come in and that's really trips us up. Like, we don't know what we believe in, like, God, Jesus thing, is this going to be weird? And, just a higher power, of a God of our choice, and whatever that is. And it's just not you. That's it, and there's so much relief in just, everything's okay. Somebody else has got this.
Yep. I totally
There's
agree.
a lot of freedom. How free do we want to, how free do we want to be?
Absolutely. And I appreciate that answer because Eric and I have a running tally between the 3rd step and the 10th step.
Well, really, David has a running tally.
I do have a running tally.
I could really care less.
No, that is not true.
But David,
he's downplaying it because he lost tonight.
It's okay, David. You got to boost your ego somewhere, and this is one of those places.
Okay, I'll take it. That's fine. That's fine. Summer's still sick, That's why I keep coming back, buddy.
So, do you want to do your little thing?
Is it that time?
Go ahead, David.
To the Twitter, ladies
right.
and gentlemen.
All right. So, we're going to do the Twitter question. So, the way this works, Molly, is
Awesome.
We will read a question from Twitter.
One of our followers.
You will answer first, and then David and I will answer after. So, it's kind of a round table. So
Awesome.
Today's Twitter question is from @HomeIsBarry. Name cannot be blank. And it's
Is that the whole thing?
It's kind of a topic question. It's the handle and the name.
Okay.
So the topic/question is loneliness. When you become sober, you lose friends and places to be. Pubs, patrons, and staff were like family, but need to be sacrificed on the journey. Yes, we make sober friends, but you always remember the conversations of old. So how do you deal with the loneliness of early recovery in losing the relationships that you had?
Ooh.
Oh, what is the quote in the big book? Pain is the price for the new life. I guess I believe that whatever our higher power takes away from us, he will replace with something better. And I guess, as I said, getting sober is hard. And it's hard because we don't have our coping mechanism. We are as much addicted to instant gratification as we are to our substance. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I've, taken that away from you and asked you to be uncomfortable and alone. And I think at that point, the most important thing is to remember that this is a program of action. You have a phone list. Use it. Call other alcoholics. When you used to make the time to drink, go to a meeting. And I saw this saying on a sweatshirt on a woman in treatment, and I use it all the time. Cuddle the struggle. Just lean into it and get real comfortable with it. This is going to be real uncomfortable. It is going to be lonely. But the most important thing is you don't have to do it alone. You can choose to be lonely, or you can choose to use that phone list and call the people on it that want to help you.
That was great. Like, real quick, we find people's little like tidbits that they say during their shares, and we use them as like the title of their podcast. And you literally just gave us two, and you actually gave me one earlier. But the pain is the price of a new life, and cuddle the struggle. That it's going to be tough to name this episode because those were both great.
Cuddle the struggle.
Cuddle the struggle is my prayer. Like when I'm uncomfortable, I'm like, cuddle the struggle, baby, because I think that's a young Pueblo quote. The pain will leave once it's done teaching you. And pain is my greatest teacher.
Dude, that's
and we as alcoholics can take a lot of pain. Oh, yeah. But you know what? When I welcome the pain in as, this is here to teach me, just kind of cuddle up to that struggle, I love
that. Then. I think we should use both, and in parentheses, cuddle the struggle.
Cuddle the struggle.
Yeah. I love that.
I like it.
I think...
Which one is... Why can't I not remember what book that's in? Is that in the 12 and 12?
Don't tell us. I don't want to know. I don't want to know where it came from.
Okay.
I'm attributing that one to Molly. That's a Mollyism, and we're gonna make it a bumper. We're gonna make it a bumper sticker. Cuddle the struggle. We'll be in a town.
Cuddle the struggle.
We'll be on a Toyota
Hashtag
Corolla near
you.
Yes. Hashtag
the struggle.
We're definitely gonna get some T-shirts made for Cuddle the Struggle, though.
Yeah.
Cuddle the struggle.
I love that so much because
there should almost be like a little like
a sloth or something.
Yeah, something that you hold so you can cuddle it.
Yeah.
And it's like the struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cuddle sloth, something.
Yeah, something.
Okay, back to the Twitter.
Yeah.
Loneliness and early recovery. That was tough in early recovery. I had the benefit of getting clean where I grew up. So luckily, three of my friends who I had like grown up, gone to high school with, and used with, all had gotten clean before me. So when I came into the rooms, they were already there. And so I sort of had a little bit of an in, and didn't really have to struggle to find my people. And so like that was a little bit easier for me. But letting go of some of my old friends who I'd been using with for a decade, it was tough, and a lot of those relationships, honestly, are pretty much gone for good. Like at going on 8 years clean now, I haven't talked to some of those people in 8 years. Those relationships are effectively, in all intents and purposes, like non-existent. But a couple of them, specifically my friend Blake, like I talked to him in early recovery. I was like, man, like, cause like he was still like drinking and smoking and doing his thing. And I was like, and we were really good friends. I was like, I got to take a break, dude. Like I got to step back. I'm not comfortable being around that. Cause like going into his apartment, he would light up a bowl or whatever. And he was like super respectful about that. And he was like, yeah, that's cool. Like I understand. He didn't make any hard feelings about it. And then as my clean time grew, I became okay with it. Like, I remember like my first concerts and first sporting events where I would see like alcohol around me. It was tough to deal with. Because I had lost that relationship. Like at a Ravens game, I couldn't get drunk. At a different concert, I couldn't smoke weed or do whatever drug or whatever. So, but as I got more comfortable with that, I could reach back out to Blake and be like, hey man, like, can I come over? And like, then like 2 years clean, 3 years clean, like it would be cool. And then like, we would be hanging out in his apartment, listening to records and shit, and be like, is it all right if I smoke a ball? I'm like, go ahead, do what you want. This is your house. It's fine, whatever. And I didn't feel that need or like panic that I did. So like, it's okay. And like, I know I've said this in other podcasts, but like me and my sponsor always go back to a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And different people are in your life in those 3 categories. Some of them are just there for a reason, like Seth was in your life. He just planted that seed. And then other people are there for a longer time in your life to grow a little bit more. And then there's the select few that are going to be there for the long haul. And those are the ones that truly matter. And those are the ones to really invest in. And it takes a while to scatter plot and figure out where people are. But ultimately, it's finding about where you are. And as long as you're comfortable in the situation you're in and the people you're around, then it's just about self-honesty and knowing yourself and when you're safe and when you're not safe. What about you, Eric? What about loneliness? Talk to us about loneliness and recovery.
So,
tell us what you think. Tell us how you feel.
all right, Dr. Drew. So, I guess when my first like honest try in recovery, it was certainly lonely.
Were you licked? Were you just licked by the drugs by that point?
Don't get me started on that term. I just want to use like a 1920s accent sometimes when I hear that word. But I guess like when I think about it, it's hard, right? Like it's not hard. I don't have that many, like all my using friends, we're usually not friends by the end of my using.
Yeah.
So like people I did drugs with.
You got weird though, dude.
What do you mean?
Like I even hear your stories about shit you did and I was like, I wouldn't want to be around that. Like, fuck that, dude.
No, I'm a crazy person.
Yeah,
like,
you're fucking nuts, dude. I wouldn't want to use with you.
Like, once I start doing my drugs of choice, or drugs of choice, drugs of choice, I lose my mind.
Yeah, you get weird, dude.
I get a little weird, and I don't really. It's not very hard to lose those people. I keep my close relationships that I've had for, since I was in elementary school. I have a lot of those, and luckily I still have had those friends, but they usually I back away when I go and dive into my addiction, so they don't really see it. Mm-hmm. And like they might see it every once in a blue moon. They might be like, "Oh man, there's something really wrong with Eric," but I usually don't blast out that like, "Oh hey, I fucked up again," and yeah, look at me. So loneliness in early recovery, with as far as like old, like missing old friends and stuff, like I don't really miss that. But the hard thing is making new friends and being lonely in early recovery and not knowing what, like, the only suggestion I can really give people that worked for me is a 90 and 90. And it's really, and it's hard to do. And I admit it is like, the only time I was able to do it is when I didn't have a job. And having a job, I'm sure if I really, really tried, I could do it, but it would be at the detriment of my like health at this point. Like my mental health would take a hit if I really wanted to do it at this point in my life. But in early recovery, doing a 90 and 90 is like, it's
priceless. It's
so essential to building your network and like becoming involved and being a part of. And without kind of, if you're just on the outside looking in at meetings, then you can feel that loneliness, like, become exponential, where, if you really do a 90 and 90, people are going to start saying hi.
Yeah.
People are going to start saying like, oh, hey, welcome, blah, blah, blah. Like, because every time you go to a meeting, people are not, we always say like we're all very friendly, but we're not for the most part. Like,
No,
we're friendly. We're just not
friendly.
necessarily outgoing.
But people are in their cliques.
Yeah.
Like if I go to a meeting,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to talk to David before I talk to someone new. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because you're my friend. I'm going to talk to you first.
Yeah, because they
Right.
we don't know who's new or not. Like
Yeah.
people travel between areas, and sometimes that guy could have 13 years. We've just never seen him before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think getting plugged in is kind of, especially in early recovery, is like the key to kind of not being lonely.
Yeah.
I think a 90 and 90 is important. I think,
Yeah.
as much as I can shit
and
on...
if you have,
Oh, go ahead.
no, wait, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, like, as much as I can, like, shit on the fellowships sometimes, and I do, I'll shit on, the fellowships, like...
We all do.
Yeah, I mean, there is just... there's nothing like being, like, that first year being super involved.
Yeah.
And, like...
Oh, yeah.
I
Take a
had
commitment.
that, right?
Take a commitment.
Yeah, and, like, being, like, a part of something...
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, it's going to change over time, but, like, just kind of, like, lean into it,
Yeah. Find your wolf pack.
But if you have the opportunity, exactly, that's what I was going to say. And if you have the opportunity, I understand some people are in small towns, there's one meeting, they'll go to that. In Kansas City, there's, 100 different groups.
Yeah.
And I go between my home group and the group I got sober at and if you have the opportunity to try different meetings, and fine. Don't just be circulating between new meetings so you don't have to share and get to know anybody. But if you have the opportunity to find a group that is your people. Mm-hmm. And it's still good even now. Like, I still have my groups that I go to. They know me. They know if I'm different. Sometimes I'll go to a different group, and I'll use that phrase again, and get my bell rang by someone who's like, wow, I have never heard that before. And like, that's what I needed to hear tonight.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's good. It's good.
Yes, it's so hard.
Yeah. Recovery is fucking hard. Like it's not
It is fucking
easy.
hard.
It's work. Like they
And we're doing it sober.
Yeah, and they call it fucking
Doing
step
anything
work.
sober is so hard when we're first in it.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, like, this is a super, super crude analogy, but it's how, like, my sponsor got me to understand it. And just bear with me for a moment. Like,
Okay.
this was an early recovery. He was like, well, which hand do you wipe your ass with? And I was like, my left. And he was like, okay, go home and for the next couple days, try and wipe your ass with your other hand. It's weird. It'll get the job done, but it's a new way of doing things that you're uncomfortable with, but it'll still get the job done. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I didn't actually do that, but I understood what he was trying, like, to say. Like, it's weird. It's difficult. You're doing something that you're not used to doing. And especially in early recovery, like, I was very vocal in saying, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I've never gotten clean before.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get clean. I don't know how to stay clean. Who the fuck has some sort of answer, some sort of experience that I can relate to and build from there? Because it's okay to everybody's been in their first meeting ever. Everybody. We all have. And when we're all in that first meeting, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. And sometimes the person who has 10 years clean, they've never been 10 years clean before. They don't know what the fuck they're doing sometimes either. But we're doing it together, and
Exactly.
that's what's so fucking cool about it, is that we don't have to be alone in a lighthouse with our 37 cats, drinking a bottle of vodka or smoking crack. Like, we don't have to do that anymore. Now we can do anything we set our minds to. And that's what's so beautiful, because we have
Well,
help.
and there's such a John Wayne, go it alone, mentality of like asking for help is weak. No, saying help is the bravest fucking thing you will ever do. And there's so many people that want to help.
Yep.
We all want to help.
Yeah.
That's how we keep what we have, is by giving it back.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I didn't get here by myself. Like, my sponsor was there. Like, my network was there. And, like, he didn't get there by himself. His sponsor was there and his network was there. All the way back almost 100 years to fucking Bill and Bob in the fucking 1930s. Like, that's how it's gone. And like, that's how it's going to continue to go in any fellowship, is like, we're going to fucking hold each other's hands in the good times and the bad times and keep getting better on a day-to-day basis.
Cool.
And something my therapist says that really resonates with me is the idea of familiar and unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. We as humans like things that are familiar.
Yeah.
We initially dislike things that are unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, really familiar things can be really unhealthy. Being drunk every day was super familiar to me. Mm-hmm. Being in an AA hall with a bunch of other people was really unfamiliar. And I just had to keep going until my brain caught up and it got familiar.
Hmm. All right.
And now it is familiar and comfortable.
Last food question, real quick, with familiar and unfamiliar. Okay. What food do you not like? What do you hate?
Ooh, cilantro, because I'm one of those people that it tastes like soap.
What is it?
What? Cilantro tastes like soap?
Cilantro? What?
Yeah, that's the thing. Google it. I don't know. We have an enzyme, or we don't have an enzyme in our mouth, that it tastes like Dawn soap.
Really? I just went to Qdoba.
Really?
I went to Qdoba earlier today. I love cilantro. It's delicious. Mine's mushrooms.
Oh,
I hate mushrooms.
So it's called like a aldehyde, or I can't pronounce that.
What?
That's crazy.
It's actually an enzyme?
Yeah.
So some people have it and some people don't?
Yeah, it contains like a natural chemical compound that, I'll butcher the name of it. It starts with an A, and to some people it tastes like soap.
Huh. Fascinating.
It tastes like soap to me. There you go.
There
you have it.
I don't like mushrooms. It feels like I'm eating a sponge.
You don't like mushrooms?
No, it's a textural thing.
They're so good. Like, mushrooms are one of my favorite foods.
They're spongy. It's like eating a sponge. I don't like it.
Here's something about mushrooms. All mushrooms are edible. Some mushrooms are only edible once.
Ooh, I like that.
Don't get me wrong. There were some mushrooms I dealt with. Don't get me wrong. And it was a good time. And it was a good fucking time.
I'm sure.
But, no, buttons, shiitakes, oysters, truffles, don't fucking like them.
That's wild.
None of that.
So good.
Yeah, but you're a freaking vegan, so what do you know?
I've eaten meat.
I know.
Yeah.
You still eat fish.
I eat fish.
Yeah, that's a meat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have. So we would like to thank our guest, Molly, for joining us this evening. Yay!
Hey, you guys, thank you so much for having me on. You know what? I have another 24. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And was this a good first podcast experience?
I loved it. I had a really good time. Thank you so much for letting me share my story.
Absolutely. And let your friends know if they'd like to come on the podcast. They are always more than welcome.
I absolutely will. Thank you so much, you guys.
Absolutely. Here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, podcastrecovery.com. You can get us on Google Play, iTunes. Like, share, subscribe, invite your friends. Come join us on the show, share your story, but most importantly, everybody out there, stay safe and stay clean.